All right, everyone, let's go ahead and let's get started. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's website accessibility training. I am your host, Ryan Clancy, the Client Success Manager here at Educational Networks, and I'm excited to have you all joining us here today. Before we get started, let's take a quick look at our game plan for today's webinar. What we're going to start our training off with first is we're going to discuss a little bit about why website accessibility is so important. And then with that, also seeing the solutions that your EduNet website is going to offer and how, along with that too, as part of our live demos, how we're going to implement that. Now, remember, during today's training that if you have questions, please feel free to ask. To ask questions, what you're going to want to do is you'll want to open up the chat window. To access the chat window, what you'll want to do is you'll want to click on the little bubble icon on your GoToTraining toolbar, and I will be happy to go ahead and happy to assist. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and let's get started. And one moment, we're just checking on something here just to make sure everything's set. There we are. All right, everyone, let's go ahead and let's get started here. Now, something important to keep in mind. Did you know that according to the CDC, 61 million Americans have disabilities? And what can happen is that there's a variety of different types of disabilities that can affect someone's ability to be able to easily navigate a website. And navigating sites that are not accessible can be difficult at times. And it is important to note that there's a variety of visual and hearing impairments that can make ensuring your site is accessible vital. And we actually see an example of that right here. What we see is that we have essentially what someone who has tritanopia, which is a form of color blindness, what they would see versus someone who is unaffected by tritanopia. So we see that here. So we see this image here and how much having tritanopia can affect that. And that really shows how important it is to ensure that your site, and then as well as the documents and the other content you add to it, are accessible. And it's important to remember as well that there are easy steps that you can take today to ensure that your website is accessible. And that, my friends, is exactly what we're going to go in and we are going to take a look at today. So something important to keep in mind is that the right formatting can make all the difference in the world when screen readers are being used today. And we see that here. We see a page that has been set up, and it's a page that has been set up with the correct headings. Now, what headings are essentially going to allow us to do is they allow us to structure a page. And that allows someone who is going in and using a screen reader to more easily navigate to a page. They can essentially go in and tab to, really amounts to different sections of the site. So it makes it easier for them to locate the content that they're going in and they're looking for there. Along with that too, adding alternative text, it's a great way to make images more accessible. But the question is, why does adding alt text make an image more accessible? Well, it all has to do with how screen readers work. So without an image having alt text or being marked as decorative, what screen reading programs actually end up doing is they end up reading out the file name. And the file name doesn't necessarily correspond to what the photo is about. In some cases, it can really just be a random combinations of letters and numbers. So that's something that we definitely want to avoid having read out. And by going in and either adding on alternative text, and in most cases, that's what you'll want to do, you're going in and making it so that the image and in turn the page that it's on is more accessible. One thing too, it's important to note that how documents are displayed is also a factor as well. So there are things that you generally want to avoid when you're adding links to documents and also even outside websites too. And there are things that look like this right over here where it says, for example, click here for music department student contract. Well, screen readers actually recognize links. So what ends up happening is if someone's visiting the site and they're using a screen reader, they're going to pick up on this link, but the only word that is linked there is here. So that doesn't really tell us anything about that particular document. A better way to have that is to still link the document, but to go in and link it to text that is essentially the exact name of that document. And that allows us to be able to go in and to be able to provide more information about that. All right, everyone. It's our turn right now to see how easily we can go in and we can implement these changes on our site. Let's go in, everyone, and let's take a closer look. So let's visit Green Tech High School's website, and let's head over here to the student expectations page. So looking at this page, we have some great content here. However, right away, I can tell that there is no headings that have been set up in the content area. And that is definitely something that we're going to want to go in and we're going to change. So we want to remember, headings are a way for us to structure the page essentially to make it easier for anyone who's visiting the site using a screen reader. Now, there's some general rules. I prefer to call them guidelines actually that you want to follow when you're going in and you're adding on headings. And what that really amounts to is that as a general rule, you want to go in order. So let's see how easily we can go in and we can add these on. So I'm going to start here by going in and starting with this text where it says 2022 to 2023 student expectations. Well, keep it in mind that generally we want to go in and we want to go in order. What I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight over the text. And to access my options for headings, that's actually our first drop down we see on the left of the toolbar. So I go in, I click on this, and that brings up these options. So as I mentioned, generally we want to go in and we want to go in order for this. So naturally we would go in and set this here as heading 1. Now, 2 things have happened here. So one, we notice that the text, of course, has changed quite a bit. Most importantly, this text is now coded as a heading as well. Let's go in and add on our next heading. Looking here, we have where it says attendance. Now, another way to think of adding on headings is that you're essentially creating a hierarchy of the content on your page. It's like you're kind of ranking the content on your page. So keep it in mind that this is our introductory content and pretty much everything's going to go in and fall underneath that. I definitely need to have a different heading for attendance. But looking a little bit further down, this essentially amounts to being like a subsection on this particular page. So I definitely need a different heading, and it is the second heading on the page. So we can go in and very easily, we'll set this up as heading 2. And looking a little further, it looks like we kind of have subsections of this section on the page, if you will. So to start with, we see where it says unexcused tardies. So the question is, which heading should we use for this here? Well, it does fall under attendance. We set that as heading 2. So we can definitely go in and set this one here as well. We'll set this as heading 3. I'm just going to go in and remove the underline from that as well. Continuing on down the page, we also now have an area here for unexcused absences. I mentioned that as a general rule, when you're going in and you're adding on headings, you want to go in order. So we have heading 2, heading 3. Now, going in order, there is exceptions to that rule, and this is definitely one of those cases right over here. Now, as I look at this here, unexcused tardies and unexcused absences, these two essentially subsections of the page, they definitely kind of fall on the same level of that page hierarchy for the headings. So in this case, it's perfectly fine to go in and to set this also as heading 3. So this is definitely one of those exceptions where we go in and we would usually go in order. So I'm going to remove the underline from that, and then I can go in and I can definitely set that up as heading 3. And before I forget, I'm just going to make sure to go in and to save this page here. So we continue on down the page, and it looks like we have another section on the page. So we see where it says academic integrity. So we need to ask ourselves once again, where does this fall on the page hierarchy? Now, it's definitely going to be on a different level of the hierarchy of the two subsections we have under attendance. And actually, it's on the same level of the hierarchy as attendance. So in this case, it's perfectly fine for us to go in and to set this as heading 2. So this is essentially another section of the page. So I go in to set up the heading, I highlight over the text, I click on the drop down, and I then go in and I switch this over to heading 2. We scroll down further, and it does look like here that we do have another subsection. So this is part of the academic integrity section of this page here. So looking a little bit further back, so we set unexcused tardies, unexcused absences as heading 3. So this kind of falls on the same level of that hierarchy, but just instead it's under academic integrity. So I would go in here, I highlight over the text, and I can now go in and set this as heading 3. So our page now is looking pretty good. We've taken some excellent steps to make it so that this content is more accessible. So we've seen how to go in and, I don't want to say really format the page, more or less structure the page. But what about going in and working with photos here? How can we make a photo like this be more accessible? And that's what we're going to talk about next here. Well, actually, there's a tool here on the page editor that can really go in and can really help with that. And looking at this here, you may have seen this before. It's an interesting looking button, kind of looks like an emoji. What's cool about this is that when you go in and you click on this, it actually essentially looks over the page for you and provides recommendations. A lot of us, of course, before we go in and, we share a document, we, of course, like to go in and make sure all the spelling's correct and everything. So this is kind of something along that line. It's just a little bit different in what it does. So this is really cool. This provides recommendations such as adding alt text if you have images on your page. So this is an excellent suggestion. We want to remember that adding alt text makes images more accessible because without the images being marked as decorative or having the alt text, what a screen reading program is ultimately going to go in and going to do is actually read out that file name. I know going in and looking at the photos that I have here on the site or on my computer here, that my photos, the file name for them does not necessarily correspond to what that photo is about. So we definitely want to go in and add on that alternative text. Now to do that, I start by taking my mouse, I bring it onto the photo. What I then do is I right click and I select accessibility. Now, when I pull up this accessibility window, I see now that I have two different options here. One is to go in and to add on alternative text The other is to go in and to mark the image as decorative. Now, in terms of marking an image as decorative, you really only want to do that in cases where the photo truly is decorative, so where it's not contributing to the main content on the page. So, for example, if you have a photo of a staff member and right next to it you have like their bio, for that, that would be definitely a case you'd want to add on alt text. That photo is definitely contributing to the main content on that page. Now, this photo we have here, it is a little bit different. It's not really, I want to say, part of the main content of the page. The reason for that, it's not really kind of the same subject as the rest of the page. It's a great photo, though. Now, this could be a case where we can definitely mark it as decorative, but for the purposes of today's training, what I'm going to go ahead and do is definitely go in and add on alternative text. And when you're adding on alternative text, what you want to go in and do is you want to essentially go in and describe exactly what it is that is going on in that particular photo there. So we'll say that this is a group of students that are maybe on a school field trip. So we can type something in such as, "Are students on the university field trip?" What I then do is I go in, I click apply, I save the page, and once I do that, now I can go in, I click on the emoji button, and that's exactly what we want to see there, everyone. We want to see where it says your page looks good. So you want to look for that message there. So we've gone in today, everyone, and we've seen how we're able to go in and how we can structure the page to make it more accessible. Also, too, how we're able to go in and we're able to add on alternative text as well to make images more accessible, too. But what about going in and including documents on our page? It's just as important too that when you're working on a document that you make sure that it's accessible as well. So part of that is, making sure that a document has the proper headings on it as an example. And a lot of word processors do feature that, such as Google Docs and Microsoft Word. So that's something pretty neat there. But it also has to do with how your document is displayed on the page. So one thing that's really cool about our page editor is that it's made it a lot easier to be able to seamlessly incorporate documents. It's important to note too that with the page editor that you actually have two different ways that you can add on documents as well. You have the more traditional way of adding them on where you would just go over to Files, click Upload Files, and you would just locate your document. So if I wanted to maybe attach another document explaining more of the student expectations, I could add that on. But there is definitely a better way. Check this out here. So what I'm going to actually do, everyone, is I'm going to go in and remove this document. So to do this, I go back to Files, I hold my mouse over the trash bin icon, and that goes in and that actually deletes that. Now, what I'm going to do next here is I want to incorporate this document into our main content area that we see here. We got a really cool way that we can go in and do that. Now, the most accessible way to do this is you want to type out the exact title of that document and then link that document to that text. So we want to remember when we're going in and adding documents or even links to other websites, generally you're going to want to go in, and what we're going to want to avoid is going to be things that say, for example, click here. The reason is if we link the document to, the text specifically where it says click here, that text doesn't tell anyone who's using a screen reading program really anything about that. The best thing to do is to type out the exact title of that. So I'm going to say I want to type in the name of the document. We'll say class rules and expectations. We got a really cool way now that we can link this document to this text. I start this off just by going in and I highlight over my text. I then go in, click the link icon, and then I can switch it to document. Once I open this window up, what I get to do next is I go in, I click select file, I find the file I want to link, I see it here, and I click open. Now let's definitely make sure that we test this document to make sure everything's working good. Now, one thing important to note is that when I'm going and I'm working on the page editor, and when I want to test links to documents or websites or other pages on the site, if I try to do that right now, I'll notice nothing happens, and that's okay. That's actually by design. That allows you to continue editing this if you need to. What I need to do now, though, is I need to go in and I need to switch from edit mode to test mode. Now, to do that, I go in and I use this button with the feather here. So when it's red, that means you're in edit mode. But once you click on this and it's grayed out like this, that means you're in test mode. So we can't go in and edit anything, but we can certainly go in and open up this document. So I click on this, works perfectly. And we also see that this document does also have headings on it as well. So it has been formatted for accessibility. So that's always something important to note too. You want to make sure that your documents also have the proper headings on them as well. And we can definitely help with questions about that as well. So we see that works, but there's something else here that we can do as well to make it so that this page is even more accessible. And what that is we may want to go in and add on another heading for important documents. So let's definitely do that. So we want to remember when we're going in and we're adding on a heading, we're going to start first by going in and typing out the text for the heading. So I'll type out important documents. Now, we kind of want to remember the hierarchy on the page. So, we have, as a general rule, generally you want to go in order with the headings. But as we've seen today, there's definitely exceptions to that. So just kind of taking a quick look at our page, we have heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, right under that, another heading 3, and then heading 2 again. So I have to think of where this heading falls essentially on the page hierarchy. So in this case, it falls kind of on the same level as academic integrity and attendance. So what that means, so those are both set up as heading 2. That means we would want to go in and set this heading also as heading 2. So to do that, I go in, I highlight over the text, I click on the drop down, and then from here, I switch that as heading 2. And then I save our page. So we'll say, everyone, that our new page, it's looking pretty good here. Now, before we leave here, I want to make sure to check the page one more time to make sure everything's all set to go. So to do that, we can use a recommendation button. So we want to remember our recommendation button is this little button here with the emoji. So it'll provide recommendations. For example, if this feature here, if it notices documents not in the content area, and as we saw today as well for alternative text. So I go in and click on this, and that is exactly what I want to go in and see. That lets me know that all the images on the page, for example, have either had alternative text added or they've been marked as decorative. And photos and documents, those are all located in the content area. So that is exactly what we want to go in and see. All right, everyone. Well, at this time, I am happy to go in and to answer any questions you have. I want to show you something here. We have a neat option that you can add on to your site, and actually two as a matter of fact, that we encourage you to add on. And I'm going to give you a little bit of time today so you can go in and work on that. And what that is you can add on a website accessibility statement. The purpose of that being to go in and, for one, to provide information to your school community about website accessibility. It's also a great way to show your community as well your commitment to website accessibility. Also, to let the community know who they should reach out to at your school if they have questions about website accessibility. And then also a website accessibility complaint form. And that's important because website accessibility is very much an ongoing process. It's something we always want to keep in mind as we're going in and as we are adding content to our site. And what's great about the website accessibility complaint form is if someone comes across something that's less than accessible, something that comes to mind is maybe a document that's been scanned in. This way they can let you know about that so that way you can get that fixed. And that's the most important thing. Now, typically with both of these here, you'll typically go right onto the footer of the site there. Now, to go in and set this up, and we're going to start here by taking a look at the accessibility statement. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to click on the grid button, of course, famously known as the waffle button. And from here, you're going to go over to accessibility. And then after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and click website accessibility compliance list. Now, taking a look at this here, we got a couple of options. So one thing is when you're looking for our website accessibility trainings, you're able to view those by going and clicking learn more, and that will open up the calendar for that. And then we have the options for our accessibility statement and complaint form as well. So let's start with the statement. I click on this, and that opens the screen up. And what you're going to notice here is that you actually have two different options here. One is to go in and to customize a statement provided by EduNet. The other is to go in and to create your own. So in this case, I'm going to say I want to customize a statement provided by educational networks. So to do this, what I'm going to go in and do, I'm going to click on it. And what that does is it opens up this window. So we see the template, and we definitely want to go and make sure we review it and everything like that. And once we do that, we can go in and we just add on our contact information. So I'm going to go in and type this out. I'll add on my phone number here. And then I would just need to go in and accept Educational Network's website accessibility policy statement agreement. I check this box. I click I agree. And then after this, I go in, I click use statement, and that fills in these fields for me. So that's pretty cool. Now, my last step for this is I want to go in and let our tech support team know where I want to have this added onto on the website. So in this case, I'm going to say that I want to have this added on in the footer. So I'll go in, I'll type this in, I'll type in footer. And then what I do after that is I would just go in and click create a ticket. And now I see that the ticket has been created successfully for that. So that's going to be added on to the footer of our site. What I'm going to take a look at next now, though, is the steps involved with setting up the website accessibility complaint form. And this is pretty easy here. I'm just going to head back to the waffle button. I head over here to accessibility, and I just go back and I click website accessibility compliance list. And to open up the complaint form, I just click set up website accessibility complaint form. Now, going in and taking a look at this, there's some things that are important to note about this. That for one, when someone sends something through this form, this is something that's going to go and it's going to be sent out to everyone who's a website admin. That happens by default. Along with that, though, you can definitely go in and you can add additional emails as well. So that would allow people who are not admins of the site to be also to be able to go in and receive that. In this case here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to leave that be. And then my last step for this, I want to go in and make sure that I let our tech support team know too where I want this to go. So in this case, I'm going to say that I want this to be added on in the footer. So I'll type that out. What I'll do now is I'll go in, I click create a ticket, and to preview the form, I can go in and click view form. I'm able to see what it looks like here. And we want to remember the purpose of this here, as I mentioned, website accessibility is always an ongoing process. It's something that we always need to think of as we're adding content. And things sometimes happen. So, as I mentioned, maybe like a document gets uploaded that was scanned in and, there's nothing that like a screen reader program would be able to pick up on. This allows us to this allows us as website admins to be notified. So that way you're going to be able to go in and you'll be able to fix that over here. All right, everyone. So what I want to go ahead and do right now is I want to give you some time so you can go in and set up those website accessibility statements and complaint forms. So let's go in, everybody, and let's take 5 minutes. What we're going to say here, everyone, is at 8:41, I'll show you also how you can send in a tech support ticket as well. Remember, everybody, in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to go in and ask. I'll be happy to help. To ask questions, what you're going to want to do is you want to click on the little bubble icon on your GoToTraining toolbar, and I'm going to be happy to assist. We'll continue on our way here, everyone, very, very shortly. All right, everyone, just about another 3 minutes to go. Remember, in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know as you're setting this up, and I will be happy to help. All right, everyone. And one thing to keep in mind too, if you ever want to go back in and, for example, edit the statement, that is absolutely something you can do. To do that, all you're going to do is you would just head over to the waffle button. You just go back into accessibility as we previously did. We click website accessibility compliance list, and I would just go in, I would select edit web accessibility policy statement for that. All right, everyone. At this time, I am happy to help with any questions you have. In the meantime, I'm going to show you how to reach out to our tech support team. We have an awesome tech support team here at Educational Networks, and what's cool is they're actually available to you Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. Eastern all the way up until 3 a.m. Eastern, which is pretty cool. You have a couple of ways you can go in and actually reach out to them. One of those being is you're going to go over here to the grid button. And after that, you would just go in and you're going to head to help desk. And one thing that's important to keep in mind is that for any request for changes to the site, so for example, if you would like us to maybe embed a document, definitely something we can do. We do ask for those requests that they are sent in as tech support tickets. That is something there for security purposes. One way to access tickets is you just go to the grid button, you're going to go to help desk, and then from here, you're going to go in and select create a ticket. It is best when you're sending in a ticket just to be as descriptive as possible. And the reason for that is that's going to be something that'll help our team complete your ticket for you more quickly. An example I'd like to use, let's say you're like a document embedded. I always suggest including the link to the page that you would like that to go onto. And that'll be something that'll help our team complete your ticket for you more quickly. All right, everyone. Well, hey, I want to thank you all so much for taking the time out of your busy days to join us here for our website accessibility training. My name is Ryan Clancy, and I'm the Client Success Manager here at Educational Networks. I want to mention that if you have questions about website accessibility, to please feel free to reach out. You can reach out to me at this phone number. This is my direct line, 407-910-2222, as well as my email address here, ryan.clancy@educationalnetworks.net. Also, too, you can use these here if you're interested in setting up a website accessibility training for your staff. I'd be happy to get that scheduled for you. Please feel free to reach out for that, and I'll be happy to assist. Everybody, keep inspiring those future generations, and I look forward to seeing you all again really, really soon. Take care, everybody.